everyone. Today we have Ryan Walsh, the CEO and founder of Valqari, who comes in with the mission to perfect the last inch of last mile across the globe. Ryan has been awarded with various key industry awards, including Pepperdine Most Fundable Companies, Chicago Dealmaker of Year Award, and ATI's Urban Air Mobility Challenge winner. He has also been recently granted with fifth United States patent focused on drone centering and direct charging systems being developed at Valkyrie. Welcome, Brian, once again. Thank you so much for joining in us today for the podcast. So, let's just quickly, start with a couple of basic questions for our audience. See, we have recently done a study at Wantstats which predicts up to 80% of last mile deliveries could be autonomous by 2030. What do you think are the unique challenges and opportunities in delivering in this context and compared to other autonomous vehicles like ground-based robots?
Yeah, thank you, Indu. I think that as we've started to roll out these technologies and we as an industry over the past 4 or 5 years, really the pandemic kicked off a lot of these projects. We've seen some of these challenges in regards to both air and ground robotics. Ground robotics in particular are much more susceptible to people tampering with them than I think was originally anticipated. There was a lot more vandalism and people messing with them, and they weren't always getting to their intended targets due to human intervention. That was particularly what got me more into drones when I was originally looking at this, 10, 11 years ago. It seems that drones are able to overcome a lot of the existing habitat infrastructure environment that is what's kind of crippling the ground robotics in some ways. I think that drones, though, have had their own challenges, particularly with regulations. When I was overseas with the military about 20 years ago, we had somebody in Colorado flying a drone in Afghanistan, right? This technology has been around for decades. And so it's really commercializing it and getting it approved by the FAA has proven to be the bigger challenge that I don't think ground robotics or a lot of other automation technologies run into. But I completely agree with that study that we're going to see our hockey stick moment, I believe, in the next 18 months, especially with the FAA's FAA reauthorization, which laid out the timeline for drones. Transport Canada having a 2025 target for beyond visual line of sight. Europe beginning to roll a lot of it out as well. We're seeing how well Mana drone is doing in Ireland. And so I think a lot of the seeds have been planted, and as we see this exponential growth, I think that 80% would be an aggressive target, in my opinion. I don't know that we would displace that much that quickly, but I think that it will add to the capacity and capabilities of the existing last mile, and that's going to end up, adding some order of magnitude of growth into it more so than replacing it, in my opinion.
Okay. So, like you rightly mentioned, regulatory hurdles are often cited as the major barrier to widespread adoption of drone delivery. What steps do you think need to be taken care of, or how can we address these challenges to accelerate the industry's growth?
That's a great question. I think there's a few things that the industry proactively can do, and one that has been going on that I'm very appreciative of, which is a very high standard of safety. If you talk to any of the professional pilots, any of the commercial companies, they all operate like military aviation, and it's important because when you're dealing with aviation, you're not just putting yourself at risk or your aircraft at risk, but everybody underneath it on the ground. And so it's very critical to have rigorous testing, quality assurance, safety processes, training to implement that across the entire organization. And so doing a lot of that has, to date, nobody dying from a drone accident, knock on wood, that I'm aware of. But we want to continue with that track record of safe industry aviation. Now, once that is really proven, and I think that was really what the goal of the industry was from like 2015 to 2018, was do these things do what we think they do? Do they fly? Do they, fall out of the sky? And everybody was very happy with the progression, I think, judging by the adoption. But we're going to see, especially in the coming years, more of a move towards beyond visual line of sight, and then more of a move to one to many, where you'll have one pilot operating 10, 20, 100 drones. We're already seeing a lot of companies get really great waivers for that from the FAA. So that gives you an idea that it's coming. I just read that waivers are up 800% for the year. And then finally, it's going to be taking that pilot out completely, where there's enough data of the drone doing its own operations to where the FAA feels comfortable regulating a non-piloted aircraft. But I think that's probably 29, 2030 maybe.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. So, also what we have observed during the study and talking to a couple of more industry key opinion leaders, consumer acceptance is another critical factor for success of drone deliveries. How do you think companies can effectively address concerns about privacy, safety, and noise to gain the public trust?
Yeah, all great questions. So I'll use some examples that we've done. But what we found is education and community engagement is really the most important thing, and especially when it's done proactively. When we were doing an operation on a golf course in Arizona, we were expecting a little bit of backlash. It was an over 55 community, and those communities tend to be a little bit less technologically advanced or forward thinking in some of that. And so all the things you mentioned were concerns we had. And so going out there, when we were talking with the people that lived around this golf course, they were members of the golf course. They liked golfing there. When we said, hey, this is going to be delivering your beer, this is going to be able to bring you food. There's no cameras on this that are recording any type of video. It's all just navigational. We're not finding anything out about you. I just want to get the beer to the ninth hole a little bit quicker and hopefully provide a little bit better service. And so once we explained everything to them, they were, oh my God, this is great. Let me order one, right? And it was a whole different conversation at that point. It was just much more, where can we take it from here? When can I get this in front of my house? All of this. And so we found that just being proactive and letting people know, we're not recording anything. We're not, taking pictures of your house. All we're trying to do is make sure we don't hit anything on your property, and that's it. So once people realize these are tools that are going to benefit their lives, and yes, it's important to be aware of the potential dangerous effects or how a bad actor could use it. But once they understand this is going to cut me having to run errands, ooh, that's music to people's ears.
Great. So, while we are having this conversation, I was thinking what would be the future. Right now, we are in a nascent stage. I would say that, tomorrow we will see a lot of maybe air traffic as well in terms of, not only the air taxis, drones as well. What do you think are the trends which are most excited, you are most excited about in the drone delivery, autonomous last mile delivery space in 5 to 10 years? So maybe let's discuss about what do you think what's going to happen in 5 years and then maybe in 10, 15 years.
I think that there's been a lot of great people and companies doing a ton of hard work around the world to solve a lot of these individual problems, from, connection to the regulatory agencies through UTM, through infrastructure like ours and the drone themselves. And so I think as all of this has been coming together, and a lot of it, especially this year, we're seeing it's really starting to actually touch people's lives, right? There's enough going on in various parts of the United States and the world and parts of Europe and India. And there's so many different use cases, right? Where you've got AEDs being delivered, you've got medical goods being delivered, you've got meals being delivered. And so as these all blend and we start seeing kind of more of almost a consolidation and a homogeneity in some of this, where some of these operators, are going to get to a point where they're providing multiple of these services, and we'll have multiple landing stations in a given region, right? And so if I've got Wing and Mana and all these different Flytrax people, delivering goods, and they can all deliver whether through a winch or landing on our landing station. And now you can get your groceries, you can get your meals, your pharmaceuticals. You order something from Amazon, they can drop it. I think that's when we really start to see that almost smartphone effect we saw, 2008, 2009, where maybe took a year where people were like, what can I really do with this? And then boom, right? You started having all kinds of different things pop up nobody could have imagined. And so things like peer-to-peer sending using drones, different business models that are going to pop up for different ways to facilitate the transportation of goods. I think it's going to mirror a lot of, the last 15 years that we saw on the internet, where people really start finding those truly novel ways to use this technology to embetter people.
Yeah. So I always imagine these sci-fi movies whenever we discuss such topics, because today we don't see drones running that easily in the air, but I'm very sure in 10 to 15 years down the line, these will be very easily visible in and around us. So I can just imagine. So my next question is very interesting. If you could have if you have a magic wand and you can change one thing about the drone delivery industry today, what would it be and why?
I would say it would need to be standardized. A lot of companies are building down proprietary tech stacks and tech silos, and it's never what the customer wants, right? With as many layers that are required to implement a drone network, from the airframe, the flight controller, the communication, everything all the way down. A lot of companies need to cooperate. And I go back to the smartphone, right? And in any one of our smartphones, there's over 100,000 patents being licensed through a standardization body. And so because we're still at that combative phase in the industry where companies are really trying to carve out as much of that market share and as much of that niche while it is still nascent, I think we're going to continue to have this tech siloing. And what we truly need to get to is a standardization, right? It doesn't matter if you're a semi truck or a motorcycle, you ride on the same road, right? And yes, certain ones are rated differently, but you're provided with some level of standardization. And so I think that's going to be the most critical factor.
Good. So, recently Amazon's BVLOS approval is a major milestone for drone delivery. Given your expertise in drone infrastructure, how do you see this development impacting industry landscape and accelerating the adoption of drone delivery solutions?
Jeff Bezos kind of started the drone delivery space in people's minds, so to speak, right? I mean, granted, there were people making progress, before that, but when he came on the news back in 2013, that was really like the aha moment. This is possible. And so while many companies are doing amazing things, and a lot of them, kind of ahead of where Amazon's at right now, Amazon is still kind of that marquee person or that marquee name in people's eyes. And so for them to make it to BVLOS after 10, 11 years, it just signifies that this industry is moving forward and it's getting adopted, albeit slower than people might have liked.
Okay, and Amazon has also predicted, and they have a very ambitious goal of having 500 million annual drone deliveries by 2030. In your view, is this realistic target? And what key factors will determine whether it's achievable?
If anybody is capable of hitting those numbers, I do think it is Amazon. They're obviously amazing as an execution company. I think what's going to happen, though, is they're going to need to more or less buy up some of the market. I think there's a few gaps in how they're doing it. And just because of, kind of the pace that other companies are moving at, I think that they should use that Amazon budget and really drive the consolidation in this industry, drive that standardization, and then they'll control kind of an aspect that they don't have right now. And so if I was driving the corporate strategy at Amazon, I would take assessment of where our drone program would be and then look at how we can complement that with a lot of the other people that are doing other market leading stuff that doesn't necessarily fall in their wheelhouse.
Okay. And one of the McKinsey's reports highlight the high cost associated with drone deliveries, particularly when compared to traditional methods. Do you think the players that provide infrastructure and charging could potentially contribute to reducing these costs and making drone delivery more economically viable?
So I go back to the first in-home microwave costed equivalent $10,000 to $12,000 in today's dollars, right? Probably not including the latest inflation. And obviously, you can go to the store and buy one for $50 now, right? Economies of scale, market maturity, things like that are going to play a significant factor in this. And so, while yes, today if you're doing 3 deliveries a day on a network and you have to have visual observers and pilots and all these things in the loop, then sure, it's going to be more expensive. But I think what that's doing is laying the groundwork for the steps towards autonomy and BVLOS and one-to-many and all these things that are necessary to make this truly economically viable. And if you look at even Amazon, them along with McKinsey and ARK Invest and a few others, Roland Berger, they've all put out great reports and they're all pretty much in line that at scale, this is about 22 times cheaper than traditional delivery. So I think we're just seeing that early prototypey cost business models kind of working themselves out phase coming to an end and working towards that commercial viability. But I do think our technology will really help support that drive towards economic viability.
So, apart from the points that you have mentioned, what are your thoughts on potential pricing models that could make drone delivery both affordable for consumers and profitable for business?
It's really going to depend who's leading the charge, right? Amazon, for instance, I haven't seen the data in the last year or so, but they were losing something to the tune of $27 billion of package theft at the height of the pandemic, right? They could outfit neighborhoods with landing stations and provide drone delivery and offset that cost and then some, right? So they could almost give it away and make that money back in the not losing packages through shrinkage and vendors loss and everything else. Now, if it's driven by a government, right? You can start by accessing healthcare, people that need in-home care, elderly care, and then slowly work your way towards a convenient type routine delivery. So I think there's ways to do it, but it really is going to depend who's kind of leading that charge because, we're seeing it. And as you mentioned, there's somewhat of a high cost to make that transition. I don't think it's necessarily anywhere close to as high as hiring somebody and purchasing a truck. But on top of if you've already got a person in that truck doing your deliveries now, to add in the additional cost of a drone network is often the barrier that most people can't overcome on their own. So yeah, whoever's leading that implementation is going to determine that model, in my opinion.
And also, do you think, the technological advancements plus majorly the regulatory changes and the government support will also help the organization for sustainable solutions?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's not just one that's leading the charge, right? If a company's out there going, here's what drone delivery can do, I think that it ends up kind of just screaming into the void in a little bit. But once we've seen the governments go, wow, this can bring new services to our constituents, and we see the corporations go, we're going to provide those services, and we want to provide that initial investment that, is kind of what's holding a lot of these areas back. Everything seems to come together very, very nicely, and we see things just blossom, right? Detroit's a great example of that.
Yeah. So, as a visionary in the drone delivery space, what is your ultimate vision for the future of last mile delivery?
I am hoping that running errands is obsolete. I hate running errands. Call me lazy. I don't have enough time on my weekends to spend hours going from store to store, grabbing what I need and all of that. And so, yes, you can order things online and they'll be here in a few days. But when we can get to the point where I get to work and I forgot my charger and I can just go boop and have a drone take it to me in 15 minutes and I can do that cost effectively, I think that's really the peak, right? But the first steps are going to be closing food deserts, getting much more affordable access to medical care in communities that don't normally have that, allowing people to have cheaper in-home care. So, if you're in hospice, you can potentially have everything you need, whether it's meals and medicine and all that delivered to your house, and you don't need to rely on six-figure in-home care. So those are the things that I'm most excited about. But towards the end of it, right, when I can order something and get it for $3 in 10 minutes from a drone, that's where I see this going.
Absolutely. I would also love to save my time while we are wasting a lot of time spending in grocery shops, etc. So I think wonderful. I can only imagine how it will solve day-to-day problems as well for common people too. So Valqari is known for its innovative drone delivery stations. Can you explain how these stations address the critical issue of direct charging for drone fleets and how they differ from other charging solutions in the market?
So I don't know that we necessarily differ from other charging solutions so much as we incorporate them, and we've tested a number of different applications. Our most recent patent is around our centering mechanism, which when the drone lands, it centers it over the center of the landing pad, and then on one of those centering bars, it has contact leads that can charge the drone. But we also have many other patents with claims revolving around wireless charging and different ways to use it, such as charging the drone if it's a third party and debiting that account and providing it to the owner of the landing pad and the charger. So homeowners can actually make money in some cases if they're on a popular route. So we're looking at all the different ways we can use it, and we're not necessarily looking to reinvent the wheel on charging technologies in any capacity, but more so to find the best in class and to find the people who are really leading this charge and incorporating those technologies. And again, back towards standardization, figuring out what's the standard solution that will work for most platforms in the industry and working towards that.
I sometimes imagine to fall in the future wherein there are no charging stations. Maybe all our equipments are charged directly through maybe air, wind energies. That's what I imagine sometimes. And I feel that may also happen maybe 50, 100 years later. Just my imagination.
I
So,
don't think so
Valkyrie
before.
recently acquired IDU Group, expanding its drone delivery infrastructure portfolio. How does this acquisition position Valkyrie in the autonomous last mile delivery landscape? And what
If
new capabilities does it bring to the table?
if you don't mind, if this is one of the areas I'd rather not go too far into just because of some of the complexities of that deal.
Perfect, no problem. So let's talk about the charging less world. So do you think that it's my wild imagination or something in a prototype or in the lab? Some kind of research is going on.
I think it's already happening, and there's amazing companies. A company we're partnered with, Get Global Energy Transmission Technologies. They've got an amazing solution where it's almost like a dish, a mesh dish that wirelessly charges the drone when it comes into that sphere using really innovative technology. I think there was some research being done at Boeing and a few other places as well of drones that can fly over power lines and charge off of the electromagnetic fields that are coming off of there with a receiver. And so I think that you're absolutely right, and there's going to be plenty of technologies in the long run that really solve that issue, and I think we're just starting to tap the very, very beginning of it. But between battery technology evolving and battery storage, that's going to play just as big of a factor as the charging, in my opinion. But no matter where these drones are charging in the air, they rarely are going to be airborne all the time, except for very, very isolated instances. And so they need somewhere to be on the ground. They need somewhere to either live or to drop things or to whatever it may be. But there are going to be plenty of times that drone is not in the air. And when it's not in the air, we want to make sure that we're giving it as much energy as possible so it can continue its mission efficiently. If it's sitting on the ground or on a landing pad somewhere and it's just waiting, it's probably burning through batteries. So we want to make sure that we can continually provide it with the maximum range and capabilities at all times.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Ryan, for all the insights that you have given us today. It was very informative. And as we keep publishing various reports and subjects, it's not only one subject that we publish. There are market related to batteries, energy solutions, green energy, etc. So
Wow.
very helpful, very insightful information that you have provided. Thank you so much again for your time. And we will publish this interview maybe in a week's time, weeks or 10 days time. And once
Great.
it is done, we will share the links with you, hyperlinks with you, and maybe we will also mention this interview in few of the publishing that we do in terms of the reports that we sell to various clients. So that will
Great.
be included there as well. Thank you so much once again. Have a
Really
wonderful evening.
appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.